$5 part standing in the grease, $100 check for building a building. Is kind of clear. And so he started building more metal buildings. My brother is 13 years older than I am, and he stepped in and started running the wrecking yards, the junkyards. My dad would die if he knew I was calling them junkyards. But you got to admit, calling them wrecking yards, everybody goes, it's not as cool. So we call them junkyards. And my brother was running them because we owned several at this point in time. And I was in college, and my dad came to me and said, I now realize the land is worth a lot more than the cars on top. So let's develop them. And if you'll come work for me, we can make something of this. So I switched my major, and when I graduated, went to join him, and we literally had one desk and one phone and 2 chairs in a little cubicle of a space that was about 12 by 12. And that was our company when we got started, and that was in 1980, I think. Timing could not have been better because all the land that Dad owned was what we now call Silicon Valley. And it wasn't called Silicon Valley in 1980, at least not by anybody else. And we started building buildings, and there was huge demand. One of our first tenants was Intel, and they just needed a warehouse to store stuff. And so we were off the races. And thankfully, I got to ride that wave.
Wow. That is epic. So, okay. I don't know if you want to, there's a lot of metrics around wealth, but all I know from your story is that you were quite wealthy at a young age, in your 20s. And there was a story in the book about you being at your dentist's office and kind of realizing some interesting things, which I'll let you share more about.
Yeah. So my senior year in college, I was doing deals from a payphone in the dorm. And by the time I graduated from college, I already made my first $1 million. So I was successful really fast, really early. And probably too fast, too early, honestly. So fast forward a little bit, I married my sweetheart, high school sweetheart that I'm still married to. We have 2 great kids. We had a house. We had a paid-for house in Fremont, actually. We had a couple of nice cars. I was driving a Porsche. Now, granted, it was a junkyard Porsche. It was the front half of this version, the front back half of that, but it was still a Porsche. Yeah, and we were doing very, very well. And I was kind of full of myself, honestly. I go to the dentist office, just a routine checkup kind of thing. And I'm sitting in the waiting room. And back when they had magazines, you pick up a magazine. And I'm flipping through the magazines, and I see one that the cover story is the top 10 hotels in the world. And it was probably like Travel and Leisure or some magazine like that. Well, as you probably all know, travel magazines are a lot like porn magazines. You don't actually read them. You just look at the pretty pictures, right? And so I'm flipping through this thing, and I'm going through this article about the top 10 hotels in the world. And when I get through the end of it, I go, wait a minute. And I go back and I look at it again. I'm like 28 years old. I'd been to 7 of the top 10 hotels in the world. And my first reaction was, whoa, that's cool. Who can I brag to about that, right? The first reaction is pride. The second reaction is the competitor in me that says, how can I get to the other 3? Because that'd be really cool. And then there was the Holy Spirit moment, or self-awareness moment, or karma, whatever your particular dogma is. I think of it as a Holy Spirit moment where I felt convicted. And I went, wait a minute, I'm 28 years old. 10 years ago, I was pulling parts in the junkyard. How in the world did I get to this point where I am living this level of luxury and privilege and opportunity? It just didn't sit right. So, like a lot of good Christian guys, I thought, oh, I should pray about this. I'm not sure I ever did, to be honest. But I did talk to my wife, which sometimes is better than prayer. And I sat down with her and I said, so I had this moment in the dental office, and I explained it to her. And in her brilliant, simple, wonderful way, she just said, well, this is what I've been trying to talk to you about since we got married. Oh, what? Wait, what? Tell me what you mean. And she said, I've been saying that this wealth that we've created, she didn't put it this way, she didn't express it quite like this, but she basically said, the wealth that we're creating is building walls between us and others. And my wife is all about relationship. A few of you know her, and you will say, she was like voted most popular, best personality. She's that kind of person, right? I was voted most likely to end up in jail kind of thing. And everybody was shocked when she agreed to date me in high school. Her litmus test for anything that's good or bad is the relationships that come from it. And it's been a great learning experience for me to be around her because of that. And her point was, this wealth is wonderful. And she wasn't complaining at all about the nice house and the nice car and the nice trips. But she did feel that there was something missing in our lives because we were creating these walls, these barriers between us and others. And it was a real wake-up call, big wake-up call for me. I'm going to continue on this story. I don't know what the next question is, so I might be answering it. But we decided, I remember sitting around the table in our kitchen, and kids were in bed. She and I were talking, and we said, do we move toward more of a super simple life, take the command of Jesus to sell it all and give it to the poor? Or do we understand this wealth as God's blessing on our lives? And, there's kind of two theological ways of thinking of that. And we realized that neither one was quite right for us. We didn't feel that God was calling us to sell it all and give it to the poor. We did feel that God was calling us to love and serve the poor. And we also didn't feel like we could just use the idea that it's God's blessing on our lives as a cop-out. And to just say, okay, well, it's God's blessing, I'm blessed, let's move forward. To us, that felt like a cop-out. So at that point in our lives, in our late 20s, which, thank God, was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we decided we are going to live a life of wrestling with wealth. And we're going to learn to live in the tension between this idea of pursuing wealth, creating wealth, but also pursuing God with all of our hearts and minds and souls. And at the core of what my wife was getting at was this wealth is interfering with our relationship with Christ. And that was a wake-up call. So for the last several decades, we have been trying our best, failing often, to live in that tension, to live in that wrestling. What does it mean to create wealth, to have wealth, to not feel guilty about the fact that we have a nice car, that we have a nice house, but to also understand we have a responsibility for those that don't. And we have an opportunity to make a difference in the world for Christ. And that nice car, that nice house, those nice vacations can actually get in the way between us and God. How do we live in that tension? We haven't figured it out. I'll be right up front. I don't have an answer for you. I have some tools, but it's a daily conversation. Well, that's probably being too nice. We don't talk about it daily, but we talk about it a lot. And we talk about it whenever we're making decisions.
So you partially answered this question. You had this awakening with your wife, who's lovely. Dion is amazing. Now what? How did your life actually change besides these routine conversations?
Yeah. Well, I never did get the Ferrari I wanted. Um, um, I think that this gets to my earlier question about what makes you uncomfortable. To break down the walls that wealth creates, you're going to have to become uncomfortable. And I came across a simple little saying one time. The writer in me came up with this. I want to live so that I'm equally comfortable at a black tie event wearing a tuxedo as I am sleeping on a mud floor or working in a junkyard.
Beautiful. Amen.
And I have to tell you that over the years, I've altered that a little bit. I want to be equally uncomfortable in those situations because they are both uncomfortable for me. I'd much rather have jeans on and boots and, working with our horses or something at our ranch than I would be at a black tie event. And I really do not enjoy sleeping on mud floors in villages. But it's good for me. It's really, really good for me. I find peace, beauty, and love in those situations with the people that I engage with. And this wrestling over these issues is actually, for me, where I find God. I find God in the wrestling. I don't find him when I'm comfortable. It's one of the reasons that the church has become boring to me, because it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I go to church. I believe in the church. I love the church. But it's boring. And I don't mean the preaching or the worship. That's a whole nother topic. I just mean it's so easy that I can't find God in the midst of it. I need something where God makes me feel uncomfortable.
Amen.
Why do you think, this topic around wealth and stewardship can be a controversial one, a heavy one. Why do you think it's so difficult for people with wealth to follow Jesus?
Yeah. About a month ago, I was asked to speak at an event up in Portland, and they wanted me to talk on the topic of hope. And I had to think about this because Chris mentioned that I do a lot of work with Pathlight, and obviously one of the things being involved with the nonprofit that I do is a lot of fundraising. And I started thinking about what is it about people of wealth that, well, I won't go through the process of what I thought of this, but I'm vulnerable, but I'm not that vulnerable. I believe that most of us here tonight, and we represent a pretty narrow cut of economic, social, philosophy or situation. I believe that actually most of us have too much hope in our life. Now, I'm not talking about hope in God. I'm not talking about hope in love or faith. I'm not talking about hope in the second coming or anything like that. I'm talking about all the other things that we have hope in. So, for instance, let's walk through a typical day. You wake up in the morning and you immediately have hope that your water system's working so you can take a hot shower and you can brush your teeth. You go out to your car and maybe you put a key in it, or maybe it's electronic start, or you press a button, but you have hope that it's going to start. You don't have reason not to hope that. Most of us don't anyway. You drive to work. Let's say, theoretically, you have an accident. Well, you have lots of hope in that situation. You might not think you do, but you do. You have hope that an EMT is going to show up. You have hope that the police will show up so that they can control the situation. You have hope that a tow truck will show up. You have hope that you have good health care. You have hope that you have good insurance. We have these things. Most of us in this room have these things. And we put our hope in these things without even realizing it. And part of being uncomfortable is ridding ourselves of that hope so that we can put our hope in Christ, not in our insurance policy, not in our AAA card that's going to get the car towed. That's the kind of hope we need. And that's what makes it really hard for people of wealth to follow Christ. We don't need Christ. That's bizarre. Now, theologically, we do. Spiritually, we do. But to live our lives, we don't. We have everything we need. That's why it's hard for people of wealth. And I define wealth just simply as, do you know where your next meal's coming from? Then you're wealthy. We don't need all the stuff that we have.
A lot of guys here have families. How did your and Dion's decision to live in the tension that you're discussing impact your kids?
Yeah, we exposed them to a lot of this. My son was 6 years old, and I still have pictures of him on the back of a Mayan farmer, piggyback on his back, and when he was 6 years old. And the Mayan farmer had a machete in one hand as we were about to cut through the jungle, and a shotgun in the other because there had been recent sightings of jaguars. And my son's on his back riding along through, 100 degrees, 100% humidity, it felt like, through the rainforest. And we slept in the village that night, and we ate their food, and we experienced all of that. And he's fearless now. He's 38 now. And he's been all over the world. And for 10 years of his life, he was a videographer. And he went to places I'm like, you are nuts. But okay. And he did great stuff. And my daughter was even more off the charts. My daughter's a badass. And a few of you will have met her and will nod your head when I say that. She went to seminary. I heard about the human trafficking problem. And next thing you know, she's moving to Thailand to start a program to serve at-risk kids in villages that were heavily trafficked for the sex trade. And I will never forget my daughter doing her dissertation. She was doing research for her dissertation. And she calls me from Mumbai. And she goes, Dad, I spent all day in the brothel. And the madam says I can come back anytime I want. And I'm going, just stick a dagger through a dad's heart, right? My blonde-haired, blue-eyed California girls spending time in the brothel in Mumbai. But it was an amazing life for them. And we did not raise them to be protected. We raised them to engage the world. And there's a balance there, obviously. We're dads. We're going to protect. It's one of the things we do. And one of the things we should do. But we can become overprotective. And we made sure that our kids engaged the world.
Love it. I have met your daughter. I've met your son briefly. I met Rachel several times, and she is indeed a badass. She's very cool. In your book, you give 3 simple rules to follow to keep yourself aligned towards God. Viciously attack ego, shut up and listen, and value community, which I think we're doing here. Can you explain how those keep your focus on Christ instead of wealth?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. So viciously attack ego. I think I've made that pretty clear in the stuff I've said right now. You have to become vulnerable. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to get in a position where you are not the center of the world. You have to viciously attack that. And any of us that are successful, which is a lot of people in this backyard, have an ego. You have to viciously attack it. You do that by being honest with yourself, but you also do that by becoming vulnerable to the people around you. Maybe it's a spouse or a parent or a pastor, a colleague at work, whatever. Maybe it's somebody here in the room, backyard. That's how you attack it. And it does not go away, folks. The ego is there all the time. So a good friend of mine here, Greg, we've traveled a bit together. And I don't know that we've ever actually viciously attacked each other's ego. But if we did, both of us would be okay with that. Because we view each other as friends first. And there's a real value in doing that. Shut up and listen is kind of the first step towards that. You really do need to shut up and listen more. And I don't mean listen so that you can act afterwards. I mean just listen. Just take the time to listen, especially to people that are different from you. Look different, they act different, they think different. Just spend time and listen. I think there's kind of a culture in American males in particular, that we're independent cowboys. And we don't listen well. And we need to get better at it. I suck at it, by the way. Actually, I suck at all of these things. And the third one is operate in community. Again, we can become cowboys real fast. We can say, a problem. I know how to solve that. I'm going to go solve that. And you probably will solve that. Well, good for you. That's fantastic. But in the process, you may have stepped on a lot of toes. You may have not operated in community. So I really challenge people. Groups like this is fantastic. Take the time to be vulnerable in a group like this. You'll grow, and the people around you will grow.
Todd Weinberg, who is basically my co-host of Holy Smokes, and many of you are here because of him. He's an amazing guy, if you haven't met him. He couldn't be here because he had, I think, 3 different family members pass in the past 3 months. And the only day all of his family could get together was today. And people flew in, and so he's spent a much needed time with his family. And I wish him very well. I've been thinking about him and praying for his family. But Todd and I, and I don't know if anyone else here, maybe Greg, but Todd and I were lucky enough to go to Belize with you on an immersion trip that focuses on the themes in your book, which was epic. To Jaguar Creek is the property's name. Can you tell us more about that?
So these trips, Dion and I, and maybe a few of you have been involved with a group called The Gathering, which is a group of mostly Christian families that focus on philanthropy. And it's a good group. It's maybe 400 or 500 families that gather together once a year and talk about how to give their money away wisely. And you've got people like me that, sort of come at it from a junkyard kind of scrappy way. And you have people like the Green family that own Hobby Lobby. So you got billionaires, you've got millionaires. It's a good group and it's a good event. Get involved if you can. Having said that, it's basically 3 or 4 days at a 5-star hotel where you're spending $1,000 a night to talk about how to give your money away. A little bit of irony in that. And a friend of mine came to me after reading Junkyard Wisdom. He came to me and he said, we need something different. And the result of that conversation was the junkyard trips to Belize. And these are Junkyard Wisdom trips to Belize that he and I co-led, and I did a couple on my own as well. We will take you to the rainforests of Belize. You'll hear howler monkeys in the morning to wake you. It's an incredible experience. And then we set up experiences that are designed to shake you a little bit. Not in a way that you're going to be freaked out or anything, but they'll just make you think. So, for instance, you've heard me already say that wealth builds walls. One of the things we do is we take people to a Mayan ruin. And we go to this Mayan ruin and we look at this spectacular castle kind of thing. It was a temple to them, but we would view it as a castle. And the courtyard where the royalty lived and all of that, and it sits atop a hill. And the whole time, the guide is describing how the Mayan culture fell apart. And the imagery, the metaphor of it is brilliant because the Mayan leaders were basically building bigger, taller, and thicker walls to the point where they had an area about the size of this backyard where they lived. And that's it. And what a surprise. Their culture fell apart. There's a lot of reasons why the Mayan culture fell apart, but that's one of them. And so we take people there, and we will often even go up to the temple. They don't let me do this anymore, but I'm going to try to do it anyway. We'll go up to the very, very, very top of the temple and have communion service up there, which really pisses off the guides and stuff. But we talk about how walls interfere in our lives. And we build walls without even knowing it in the same way that the Mayans did. Another quick example of this is, well, I need to tell the background story, which I think might pre-answer another question. But I intentionally designed a trip one time when my daughter was working in Southeast Asia. I intentionally designed a trip that bounced between the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich. So I'd go to a slum in Bangkok called Klung Toi Slum. It's one of the poorest places in the world. There's literally 1 million people in like a half square mile, and all of them live like on $1 a day. It's disgusting. It's terrible. So I would stay there. And then the next morning, or a few mornings later, hop on a plane and fly to Singapore and check into the Raffles Hotel.
Right.
And then from there, I flew to Myanmar and stayed in a hotel that had been recently bombed by counter-terrorists, basically, and then drove out into the countryside and worshipped in a church that was about the size of this mat, and it was a raised bamboo building. And then from there, flew back to Bangkok and stayed in the Four Seasons. And all of this ended back at the Raffles Hotel in Singapore, where, by the way, if you ask for the VIP treatment, they pick you up in immigration in a Rolls Royce and take you to the hotel. It's really cool. And I'm sitting there in the bar, which is kind of my native environment, and I'm drinking a glass of wildly overpriced Cabernet Sauvignon and making notes in my journal about what I've just experienced for the last week. And I'm watching people come and go. You know, when you're in a 5-star hotel, the people are beautiful. The kids are adorable. You know, the mom's gorgeous. The dad's fit. The grandparents, you know, look like they could be models on TV for some medical device. You just sit there and you just smile, right? And everybody's nice to you. And everything's yes, sir, it's my pleasure, sir, all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm sitting there and I realized, you know, it's not that I despise the poor. It's not that I don't care about the poor. It's not that I don't want to take God's mandate to care for the poor literally. I just flat out forget the poor. I forget them. I go to a place like Raffles Hotel and wrap myself in this luxurious bubble of wealth and luxury. And I forget. So we do a version of that when we go to Belize. And if you go with me sometime, we would walk through a village where they don't live on $1 a day in this village, but they're still living on $5 a day, which ain't much. And we'll walk through the village, and we'll have some of the local village, usually teenagers, give us a tour of their hometown. And it's poor, and it's challenging for a lot of North Americans that experience this. And we'll spend the morning there. And then when we're done, we go have lunch. And then we hop in the van and we drive over to a really nice resort that has a swimming pool about the size of this backyard. And I've set it up where we get the swimming pool and we get the bar open. And I just say, look, just relax. The afternoon is free time. You know, you had intense experiences up to this point in the trip. Just go relax. After about 3 hours of that, I call them all together and I give them that little talk and say, we forget the poor. We've wrapped ourselves in bubble wrap and we forget the poor. So the trip is stuff like that. And they're all things that come from the book. So if you read the book and you've heard these stories, you won't be surprised on the trip now. But you'll still have a lot of fun. And we drink and we smoke and we eat too much. And you go, yeah.
You said that 2 passages in Scripture shaped your thinking about wealth, poverty, faith, and justice.
Yeah.
Galatians 2, 9 through 10, and Proverbs 31, 1 through 9.
Yeah.
What do you see in those passages?
Oh, man. All right. So let's go with Galatians first. Paul writing to the Galatians. And he's kind of laying out his bona fides, right? He's saying, this is who I am, guys. You need to take me seriously. And almost like a little throwaway line, he says, what was it, verse 9 and 10?
Galatians 2, 9 and 10,
Yeah.
Proverbs 31, 1 through 9.
So in verses 9 and 10, Paul kind of has this little throwaway line where he said, those who report to be, or say that they are the leaders of the church in Jerusalem, said that I could go and speak of the gospel around the Roman world under one condition, and that is that I not forget the poor. You know, I'm sure most of you in the room have read that passage. I'm sure most of you have read it and go, well, yeah, because they were poor in Jerusalem and they wanted Paul to take a few offerings and bring back money to the poor in Jerusalem. And in fact, we see that. That's what Paul does in other passages, right? Okay, I have a different interpretation on this. And I should say right up front, I don't speak Greek. I don't know how to read Greek. I don't speak or read Hebrew. I'm not theologically trained, but I have a lot of friends that are. And I'm a really good arguer. And they've yet to concede that I'm wrong. Okay? So my take on this passage, you know why they told him, don't forget the poor? It wasn't so he would take an offering and bring it back to Jerusalem. It's because he was going to the richest and most powerful people in the world. He was going to Antioch. He was going to Athens. He was going to Rome. He was going to the centers of the known universe in his world at that time. And he was going to talk and speak and interact and live with and smoke cigars with and drink whiskey with the people who were the richest people in that part of the world. And they were afraid that if Paul heads off and goes and does this stuff, he's going to forget the poor. He's going to lose himself in the midst of all of that. So that's how I interpret that particular passage. That's why it's so powerful and important to me. The other passage is actually, it's quite a lot of fun. All of you know Proverbs 31 as the passage about the noble woman, right? Which great passage, but that doesn't start until you're about a third of the way through the chapter. The first third of the chapter is a little message from the mother of the king to the king. And scholars argue about it, but it could very well be Bathsheba writing to Solomon. It could be totally wrong on that. Who knows? But I like to think of it as Bathsheba writing to Solomon. And she's saying, hey, son, look, if you're going to be king, one of the things you need to do is give beer and wine to the poor so that they can drink and forget their misery. Go look it up. It basically says that. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's basically what it says. It's a challenging passage because it's basically, to our eyes and our ears and our cultural context, we read it and think, she's telling him to give beer and wine so they can go get drunk? Doesn't make any sense. That doesn't sound very scriptural. Doesn't sound very spiritual. I don't think that's what she was telling. I think what she was saying to her son, the king, was, hey, these people are hungry and live miserable lives, and they're poor. You need to give them something to celebrate. Beer and wine wasn't meant as something to get drunk with. It was something you brought out for a party, like tonight. You bring it out to celebrate. You bring it out for a wedding or an anniversary or something of that nature. So she was saying, give them something to make them love life again. Give them reason to celebrate. That's powerful when you look at it that way. I had a wonderful argument with one of the top 5 theologians in the world over this. Actually, it was at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., and we were arguing about it. And he finally said, and this is a guy that speaks like Sumerian, much less Hebrew, right? I mean, he's crazy. And he finally looked at me and he goes, you know, you might be right. And that's all I needed. So, okay, great. Junkyard Kid scores 1 on the theologian.
You are definitely one of the wealthier people I know, which is cool. But I think what is way more cool is that you're also one of the most generous people I know. That being said, how do you make giving decisions? It's kind of a dual question. How do you make giving decisions, and what tips can you give us for making wise decisions about generosity?
Yeah. Dion and I make giving decisions. The guidelines have evolved over the years. And so now I can pretty much zero in on the things that I know that we won't be giving to. And it doesn't have to do with the lack of meaning or the lack of purpose or the lack of value. It has everything to do with what resonates in our heart. I can't give to everything. And so I need to understand, God, did you put this person in my life because you want me to support them and encourage them and love them? Or did you put this, or is it just random? Because we're going to be asked, I don't want to exaggerate, but I bet I get asked by 100 people a year, would you support us? And you just can't do that. I mean, unless you give $100 to everybody, but that's meaningless. You really want to take the time to understand what God is speaking to your heart. And that's often just what strikes your fancy, quite honestly. It's what is it that you see as bringing glory to God in your giving? So for Dion and I, our giving can be broken down to, it's almost always faith-based. It's almost always going to impact the poor, because we really genuinely feel that's what God has called us toward. We have a heart for children. And I loosely define children up to, say, college age. And we have a heart for education. So if you brought me an opportunity to give to church planting, I'm probably going to say no. And it doesn't mean I don't agree with church planting. It's just that's not in our grid work. So we've taken the time to figure out that grid work and what areas can we really make a difference. Now, the exceptions are there's going to be times where there's a real need in the world. And then you combine that with somebody that you look at and you go, that's an impressive leader. So we'll break the rule for that situation. We actually recently did break the rule for that situation. We supported a guy that works on the border in Texas. Great ministry. It's not something we would normally have supported, but we couldn't help but look at it and go, this guy's really impressive. And his work is really impactful. So we supported that. We also, we own our own business. So there's always a little bit of feast or famine, right? There's years where we make a lot of money and there's years we don't make any money. So we don't live by the 10% tithe thing. There's years that we give nothing. And there's years that we gave 400 or 500% of our income because we were tapping into savings and stuff. I would say, I don't write about this in the book because it sounds a little triumphalist. But I'd say in the 44 years we've been married, our average giving on an average year is about 35% of our income. And I feel good about that.
What are you working on now? And also, what is the biggest personal, business, personal, and spiritual spiritual challenge that you're facing now?
Yeah, so I started writing books, and my first book came out in 2016. I really enjoyed the writing process. I do not enjoy the selling process. The publishing industry is dysfunctional. The only way I can put it. And somebody encouraged me to write some devotions for Christmas. And I don't know, I had like 700 people on my mailing list or something. It was a small group. I said, okay. So I wrote little short 400-word daily devotions that went out by email. It was so popular that I ended up with 8,000 people on my mailing list. And there were 24 of them for Advent. And they were wildly popular. They're just little short 400-word stories. And I, being a junkyard guy, I wrote it in the context of it's a road trip of Mary and Joseph going from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And it was fun. It was successful beyond my wildest dreams. There was demand to do it for Lent. So I did one for Lent, and suddenly I had 15,000 followers. Long story short, I now have 50,000 followers that read this stuff when I send it, and it's blown me away. It's become a job. It's one day a week job, but it's a job. And I really enjoy doing it. It's a great release in my writing. I come up with creative stories, like I've told you about my take on Galatians or my take on the Proverbs passage. These are just different takes on stories we've all heard. I make the humans very human. For instance, for the Advent story, when Mary is confronted by the angel, I have Mary saying to the angel, that's not how Mom said it would happen. So they're a little edgy, and it just makes the theologians squirm, which I kind of like. And it makes us all a little uncomfortable sometimes, which I also like. So that's kind of what I've been working on now. And I released a book last Christmas, a series of Advent devotions that it's my best-selling book by far. And we're going to do another one for Easter that'll come out next year. The second part was biggest challenge, I think. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Earlier question, yeah, biggest personal, business, or spiritual challenge you face now?
Business is good right now. Knock on wood somewhere, please, somebody, because it can turn in a heartbeat. We all know that. But business is good. I'm a grandpa for the first time as of a year ago.
Oh,
yeah, that's awesome. My kids live close. One's in Oakland, the other's in Albany. So they're just far enough away that I don't have to see them every day, but they're close enough that I get to see them regularly. My daughter works for me, which is fantastic. So most of the things that we would consider challenges are not right now. I think my biggest challenge right now is Pathlight. Dion and I, along with two other friends, founded it in 2008. And I'm getting to the point now in my life where I go, okay, this is turning into sort of a legacy ministry that we're doing. It literally is going to transform this country. How is it going to survive when I retire? Which I don't have any plans for right away, but it's sort of the founder syndrome for a lot of nonprofits. How does this thing sustain itself going forward without me around? And so the board and I are talking about that, but it's hard. It's hard to figure out. And we're making progress on it, but not nearly as fast as I wish. Nonprofit stuff is nowhere near as fast as business. It drives me nuts.
Amen.
This has been amazing so far. On to a few bonus questions that we have here that are, I wouldn't say more fun, or more interesting, but to some they might be. One is, so I think from your story, growing up on a junkyard, and from various cars I've seen you drive, you must love cars, I'm guessing.
I do.
What do you own and what do you want to own?
Okay. I own a 1936 Ford convertible that was my dad's. It's pristine. It's wonderful. It sits in my garage, and I just smile every time I see it. I own a 1958 Chevy Apache pickup truck that I gave my wife on her 50th birthday and said that you're both the same age and you need an old pickup truck if you're going to be a farmer. She grows olive trees, makes olive oil. I own a 1956 Dodge pickup that my grandpa bought brand new. And he gave it to, he left it to his oldest son, who left it to his oldest son, who left it to his little brother, who gave it to my brother, who gave it to me under the condition that I sell it to my son for $1. So it's kind of fun, have that in the family. Currently driving a Porsche Cayenne Coupe hybrid, plug-in hybrid, turbo. And when you put the turbo on and you get the electric going at the same time, you go somewhere like from Danville to San Jose in a blink of an eye. It's really fun. It's a car that I want. I'm not sure yet what I want next, but have any of you heard of Kindred Motors? Yeah, I just found out about them like in the last few months. They're a Bay Area based. They're up here on the Old Mare Naval Island. Is that Visalia? And they are taking old cars, like a 1940 Ford pickup or a 1970 Bronco, whatever. Everybody's doing Broncos now. And they're resto-mod them. And so you get this old car, but this beautiful interior, like electric seats and power windows and Apple Play and all the rest inside this old car. And they're being built like 30 miles from here, not even that. So I might be interested in one of those next, just for the fun of it. Total waste of money, but whatever. I'll just ask for forgiveness later.
I have several other bonus questions I could ask you, but for the sake of time, I'll finish with just what words of wisdom would you have given your younger self?
Yeah. Okay. First, and this is coming from a bald white male with lots of English heritage, wear your sunscreen. That'd be the first thing I'd say. And I'm serious. I've had some skin cancer issues and I wish I'd worn my sunscreen. The second thing is, more seriously, it comes back to my opening about what makes you uncomfortable. I wish that when I was 22, somebody had come alongside of me and said, make yourself uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form. I really do wish that, because I think at the root of what I learned in the junkyard was to not hold things too tightly and to understand that contradictions are where we live. You've all seen the diagrams and the cute quotes and all the rest, but there's lots of different perspectives on the same thing. And I wish I understood that better when I was young. I wish that I had been willing to live without the answers. I really think life is a lot more interesting when you live in the midst of not having the answers. It makes life harder at least emotionally, and spiritually. But I think life's better. And I wish somebody had explained that to me. I'm not sure I would have understood it when I was 22. But I wish somebody had explained that to me, and I wish I'd lived more like that.
This has been amazing. Thank you for sharing, Roy. If you enjoyed this talk and you want more of this in general, that's why he brought his epic books, Junkyard Wisdom, which he effectively not rewrote. Did you rewrite it?
I wrote Junkyard Wisdom in 2016 and re-released it in 2021. This is the re-release.
I'm halfway through the re-release, and it's epic. I'm loving it more than the first time I read it. So those are on the table, a lot of them. So please take one. And the other book, Salvaged. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
No, just there's 2 books.
There's 2 books, and you're welcome to just take them. If you can't afford them, you don't want to buy them, you don't have the Venmo account, whatever, just take them. There's a envelope inside them. Just send the money if you think it's worth it. If you don't, send me a nasty note. I'd be entertained by that too. Or just take them. I mean, I'm not in this for the money. So
All the profits go to Pathlight, by the way.
Yeah.
I have several other questions, but I wanted to open it to the audience to see if anyone had any pressing questions for Roy that they need an answer to. And you can just shout it out. John, go for it.
What was like the first thing that you would do to push yourself in uncomfortable situations besides going to slums and things like that? God.
yeah.
The question was, what would you do besides going to slums in Klong Tui or Thailand or Belize? What would you do? It's more maybe not more practical for the group here to get yourself uncomfortable. Is that right?
I think it begins with people. So figure out who you're really uncomfortable around and go hang out with them. So, and if you tell me I'm not uncomfortable around anybody, you're a bullshitting liar. There are people that are going to make you uncomfortable. Go find them. For some people, it's just, we live in a split world these days. It's political, right? Go find a Democrat, go find a Republican, whatever. For other people, it's, gosh, I can't stand these activists that are protesting this or whatever. Go find them, hang out with them. For other people, it's, they don't talk like me. They don't think like me. They're a different color than me. They're massively younger or massively older. Find the people that you are uncomfortable with and go hang out with them. And if that means enrolling in a junior college class, night class kind of thing, go do it. One of the things I used to do is I would take the long way home after work when I was young, and I'd drive through the worst neighborhood I could find. My office was in San Jose at the time. I would go through East Side San Jose. And I would not just drive through, which is fairly easy, but I would stop at a 7-Eleven and go in and buy a Coke or something. And I got held up. I literally had a gun pointed at my chest from some druggie that was robbing the 7-Eleven. I was going, okay, maybe I'm pushing this a little too far. But that kind of thing. Do that kind of thing.
Seth?
Have you ever had any generosity that went really bad or you really regretted? And how did you deal with it?
Oh my God. How long a list do you want? Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I write about that in the Junkyard Wisdom book. So
Real quick, the question by Seth was, have you had any generosity experiences that went particularly bad?
yeah, how long have we got? The list goes on and on and on. You learn from them, right? And we funded the building of a laundry facility in a village one time. I'm in real estate. I should know better. I never thought to ask, do you have running water in the village? We literally built a laundry facility in a place where there's no running water. So yeah, I've had some really bad experiences giving money away. But
into that.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
How did I get into that?
You didn't listen. You didn't shut up.
I didn't listen. I didn't shut up. And the people that were giving me advice, I can say this here. Well, actually, it's probably better if I say it with a group of women. But the village elders were all men. And they didn't ask the women either. The women are the ones that used the laundry facility. And they were walking to the river every single day to both get fresh water and also to do the laundry. And the men thought it'd be a great idea. Let's put in a laundromat so our wives don't have to walk down to the river. Oh, a bunch of idiots. They didn't even think that there's no well in the village. There's none. There's no water. So anyway.
Smoking, and my question is do you have any family-friendly trips that people could bring their kids on?
Yeah,
Okay.
we do. And actually,
With the drinking and smoking too, but that's a different kind of trip.
yeah, it is. It is. Yes, we do. And they are, I've taken, actually, there's some people that, some of us here were talking about Kayvon Saber. Kayvon brought his whole family down, and he's got like four kids. And he brought some friends. They all live back in Nashville area. So that was it wasn't the most recent, but it was one of the most recent trips that we do. Yeah. And they're anywhere from 4 days to 7 days long. Belize is easy to get to. So it's like a 2-hour flight from Houston. Once you're there, me and my team, we know everybody in the country. So we can take you to exotic locations that the kids are going to be blown away by. I do think there should be an age limit on these trips. It really helps if they can read and write. So, 6 or so, 7 maybe, something like that. I've had younger, but they don't get anything out of it.
Legacy?
Roy, thank you so much for your insight, and it's been very valuable. So thank you for sharing. My question is, you said you wish when you were younger, someone would have told you to get into more uncomfortable spaces. So when you're in those uncomfortable spaces, what do you do to actually, what is the process that you go through to gain the clarity within that uncertainty?
Yeah, great question. When you go to these uncomfortable situations, first of all, they're all different, right? I was in Thailand when it went through a coup. That was a very uncomfortable situation. I was in Haiti when it was invaded by my own country. I've been in ministering in a political prison in Zimbabwe. These are really uncomfortable situations, and each one I think we had to process differently. But it is just processing. It's coming back and going. In case you haven't figured out yet, my junkyard swear words are pretty good, so I end up just swearing at God. I literally do. And I figure God's going to forgive me, and I don't think he cares about profanity nearly as much as we do anyway. And so I've been known to just argue with God and cuss him out. And that's just part of the wrestling. And God usually slaps me on the side of the head in that process. But that's how I learn. I want to make sure, excuse me, I want to make sure you have a good cultural guide in that situation. If you're doing this in an impoverished neighborhood in the U.S., you're probably going to be dealing with a situation where there are people of color involved that have very different experience than you have. And so you need somebody that helps you understand what you're seeing and hearing and sensing and what they're trying to teach you. The same is true if you're in Belize or Zimbabwe or Thailand or wherever. You need to have somebody that culturally interprets it for you. I think the people that can do that are brilliant. Those are the people that are comfortable both in the tuxedo and on the mud floor. I'm that way sometimes, but not all the time. That help?
One over here.
Marcus.
Roy, thank you so much for the talk. Very, it's challenging and enlightening, you know. From a father that has a boy that is very in a comfortable area, what you're speaking about is much needed. This generation needs to hear this message. I wish I could take this whole talk and take my son. But my question is, if someone wants to go to this police trip, how can they get involved? How much is it? When's the next one?
Yeah, there's not one planned yet. Depending on what you can afford, it can cost anywhere from about $3,000 to $300,000. We're going to have a really good time on that $300,000. They are a charitable endeavor, though. I mean, it's not like I'm making any money on it, so the price point can be flexible.
Let's have a Holy Smokes trip. How about that?
Yeah. We could absolutely do that. And the Cuban cigars are everywhere in Belize. So easy to do. There used to be direct flights from Belize to Cuba. That was fun. Yeah, we do them. I used to do them once a year, and then COVID interrupted all that. And we'll do them again. You can my email address is roy@junkyardwisdom.com. So real simple. Just drop me an email. And I'm one of those stupid people that put my email in all my books. Like Bob. Yeah, Bob and I grew up together. Yeah, we met in kindergarten. So he wrote the foreword to one of my books over there. But yeah, Bob does the same thing. But Bob has like 16 emails and 14 different cell phones. So he has a way of managing it. And 200 people that work for him to manage it for him. You know? Me, it's just me.
So if you have other questions, I think Roy's going to be here for a little bit to hang out and answer some more, maybe one-on-one or in a small group. I want to share a few things. This has been a pretty full circle moment for me for a few reasons. Roy, I was one of those guys that reached out after reading his book, just sent him a cold email, and we ended up getting coffee, which led to several coffees, which led to a Belize trip and staying in touch and led to him being here. So thank you again. Roy introduced me to New Canaan Society. He was a speaker back in 2017. Raise your hand if we have Tony here, Tony Pangiris, the stud in the front, and Tyler Brassfield rolled in, looking all snazzy in the back here. Amazing guys that I'd recommend you connect with before you leave. These guys are among a few circle that lead New Canaan Society San Francisco, which the Silicon Valley chapter, which Roy spoke at 2017 when I was in college, and he invited me to, and I learned about NCS then, and then I moved to San Francisco after school and got plugged into and stayed pretty consistent. It's been an amazing group of men, pretty similar to this group, that has just been transformative and have really supported me. And that I've spoke at, and it's just has been an amazing group of guys. So if you want more of this, we do Holy Smokes. If you don't know, every other month at 3 different homes. Todd Weinberg's house, Nico, who couldn't be here, he has a beautiful home and backyard in Alamo, and then Joel Malakoff. Hopefully this went well and you want to host us again. But NCS is an amazing group of guys, many of which are here. And I would recommend you get plugged into. If you want to get plugged into that, talk to me, talk to Tony, talk to Tyler, and several other guys here. Because that's a great group of dudes. The other full circle moment is this home, and how I met Joel is through a Barnabas group. Is Dan Menegas still here? Dan, raise your hand. There you go. Dan is the main guy among another small group of guys and gals that relaunched Barnabas in the East Bay. Barnabas is a really, really cool, I think, nonprofit that basically thinks Shark Tank meets, nonprofits. I met Spencer Romero, who came out from Fremont. Spencer? Raise your hand. There he is. awesome dude as well. Just great people, great organizations. If you want to get uncomfortable potentially and use your business marketplace knowledge to give back to nonprofits, Barnabas is amazing. I joined recently as a partner, and I'm super excited to go to more events and meet more guys like Spencer and support however I can. So those are two actionable organizations and groups you can get involved with that relate to this talk and community and generosity and all that good stuff. Like I said, Roy, thank you again. Please grab a book. They're fantastic, very engaging. Roy's way of talking is the same in his books. It's very raw and very Roy, which I love.